Welcome back to the deep dive. We've got a really fascinating stack of notes to get through today because we are looking at a piece of ancient literature that, honestly, if you play by the standard rules of the genre, it really shouldn't even exist.
No, it shouldn't. It definitely breaks the mold. I mean, it's an anomaly in almost every possible sense.
Exactly. Usually when you're looking at biblical texts or ancient Near Eastern religious documents, the narrator is exactly who you'd expect. You get a prophet, a priest, maybe a royal chronicler.
Someone firmly on the inside.
Right, an insider. But the source material for today, this is Daniel chapter 4. It's a first-person autobiography written by the villain.
That is probably the best way to put it. It's a testimony penned by Nebuchadnezzar II of Babylon. And just to frame this correctly for everyone listening, this isn't some kind of confessions of a nice guy story.
Yeah, no kidding.
It's not a memoir about how he learned to be a benevolent leader through, like, a management seminar.
No, definitely not. I was looking at the historical profile on the notes, and this man was a monster. I mean, successful, sure, he built an absolute empire. But the sources describe a ruthless tyrant. He's the guy who burned Jerusalem to the ground.
Right.
He's the guy who, just a couple chapters earlier in the text, ordered the execution of literally every single intellectual in his city just because they couldn't interpret a dream fast enough.
Exactly. He was known for threatening to tear people limb from limb and turning their houses into rubbish heaps if they annoyed him. So this deep dive today, it's focused on a text written by a man of absolute, violent, unchecked power.
And yet the actual narrative is about his total psychological collapse. It's a before and after story. We're essentially reading the diary of a madman who somehow came out the other side.
We are, but we need to look beyond just the history or the biography here. The notes really highlight that this text is actually a highly sophisticated argument about the psychology of power. It's about the incredible resilience of human pride, like how hard it is to actually kill our own ego. And it makes a very specific theological argument about who really runs the world.
So let's get right into the text then. It opens up with a dream. Nebuchadnezzar's back in bed, he's comfortable in his palace, and he sees something that just completely terrifies him. Now, he's had dream trouble before in this book.
He has, but the dynamic here is completely different from what we saw back in chapter 2. In that previous instance, he was incredibly paranoid.
Right, he wouldn't tell anyone what the dream was.
Exactly. He refused to share it because he just didn't trust his advisors. He demanded they tell him the dream and the interpretation, which is obviously an impossible task.
He was testing them, but here in chapter 4, he's basically an open book. He gathers all his wise men together, the Chaldeans, the astrologers, the whole royal think tank, and he just lays it all out. He says, here is exactly what I saw.
And the imagery is vivid. But it's not exactly abstract art. He sees a great tree in the center of the earth. It's massive. It reaches the sky, and it's visible to the ends of the earth.
And it's sustaining everything, right?
Yeah, animals find shade under it. Birds nest in its branches. It literally feeds the whole world.
Okay, so looking at the cultural context notes here, this imagery wasn't unique to him. This wasn't just some random firing of neurons while he slept.
Not at all. In the ancient Near East, the great tree was a standard political metaphor. You see it in texts like Ezekiel 31 when talking about the Assyrian Empire.
Oh, interesting.
The tree represents the state, and more specifically, it represents the king himself. He is the source of protection, shade, and sustenance for the known world.
So Nebuchadnezzar has a dream where he basically sees himself as the center of the universe, providing for absolutely everyone. That sounds like a pretty good Tuesday for a narcissist, so why was he so terrified?
Because of the plot twist. A watcher, a holy one, comes down from heaven and shouts, "Chop down the tree."
Subtitle, your time is up.
Precisely. The command is to cut off the branches, strip the leaves, scatter the fruit. It's a total dismantling of the empire. It's the sudden end of the protection and power that he represents.
Now, here is where the story gets really weird to me. And I think this says a lot about the atmosphere of his court. He tells this dream to his wise men. These are supposed to be the smartest guys in Babylon. And the text says they just sat there in silence. They could not interpret it.
Well, could not is the phrase the text uses. But scholars have debated this for centuries. Because look, if I tell you I dreamed of a great CEO who got fired and lost his entire company, you don't need a PhD in symbolism to figure out what that means.
Right. It's pretty on the nose.
The symbolism of the tree was blatantly obvious to anyone living in that specific culture.
So you think they were just stonewalling him?
Put yourself in their sandals for a second. You're standing in front of the guy who turns people into rubbish heaps.
Sure.
He tells you a dream where he gets chopped down. Do you want to be the one to step up and tell him, hey boss, quick update, the tree is you and you are completely finished?
Yeah, that's a career-limiting move right there.
It's a life-limiting move. The source material suggests their silence wasn't about a lack of insight. It was about an abundance of fear. They were paralyzed. They knew exactly what the dream meant, and they were terrified to say the words out loud.
Which perfectly sets the stage for Daniel, or Belteshazzar, as he's known in the court. He comes in, hears the dream, and even he freezes. The text says he was appalled for a while.
And that reaction absolutely confirms the danger of the situation. Daniel isn't just a prophet here. He's a high-ranking official who understands court politics intimately. He hesitates because the message is borderline treasonous.
He actually tries to soften the blow a bit first, doesn't he?
He does. He says, "My lord, may the dream be for those who hate you."
He's wishing it was about literally anyone else. But he eventually drops a hammer and says, you are the tree. But, and this is the specific detail I really want to drill into, it's not a death sentence.
No, it's not. And that's the key distinction here. The command from the Watcher was to cut down the tree, but to leave the stump in the earth, bound with iron and bronze.
What exactly is the significance of the stump? Because if you want to get rid of a tree, you grind the stump out, you don't leave it there.
It represents a very specific type of theology, which is disciplinary judgment. If the roots were dug up entirely, that's annihilation. That's the permanent end of his dynasty.
Total destruction.
Right. But leaving the stump implies that life still remains in the root system.
So it's a pause button, not a delete button.
That's a great way to put it. It suggests that restoration is possible. But notice the binding, the iron and the bronze. There are a few ways scholars read that, but many commentators see it as a symbol of severe constraint.
Meaning he's trapped.
Exactly. The madness that is coming isn't going to destroy him completely, but he will be bound. He'll be unable to function, kept in a very strict holding pattern, until the lesson is finally learned.
And the lesson has a very specific syllabus, too. The text mentions that 7 periods of time must pass over him. Why the specificity there? Why not just say, until you get your act together?
It's all about sovereignty. If the madness was random or indefinite, it would just look like chaos. It would look like the gods had abandoned him or that he just had a tragic mental health crisis.
It's a medical issue.
Right. But a set time, these 7 periods, implies that this is a controlled demolition. It has a scheduled start date and an end date. It's authorized by a higher power.
So Daniel delivers this incredible forecast. He tells the most powerful man on earth, you're going to lose your mind and live like an animal. And then he actually gives him an out. He says, break off your fins by practicing righteousness. Perhaps there may be a lengthening of your prosperity.
That is the grace clause. The judgment was always conditional. If Nebuchadnezzar had humbled himself right then and there, the axe might have stayed in the shed.
But he doesn't do that. And this brings us to the part of the notes that I honestly found the most haunting, the 12-month gap.
It really is the most psychologically revealing detail in the entire chapter.
Daniel warns him, and then nothing happens for a full year. 365 days of business as usual. Why? What is happening in that year?
Well, on a theological level, the source suggests it shows extreme patience. God essentially gave him a full year to change course. But on a human level, just think about what that kind of delay does to your brain.
It makes you get comfortable.
It creates a massive false sense of security. You get this terrifying warning, and you're probably on edge for a week, maybe a month. You're constantly looking over your shoulder.
Waiting for the sky to fall.
But then the economy keeps growing. The borders remain secure. Your approval ratings are up. The tree still looks completely healthy and great.
You start thinking, maybe Daniel was just wrong. Maybe I'm the exception to the rule. Maybe I dodged the bullet.
Exactly. The delay actually serves to calcify his pride. If the lightning bolt had struck the very next day after the warning, he wouldn't have had the time to become quite so arrogant.
The delay feeds the ego.
It does. It allowed him to prove to himself that he was untouchable. He essentially convinces himself over those 12 months that his success is completely immune to moral consequences.
Which brings us right to the scene of the crime. 12 months later, the king is walking on the roof of the royal palace.
Yeah.
And we really have to picture this. Babylon was an absolute marvel of the ancient world.
Oh, unmatched.
You've got the Ishtar Gate, the Hanging Gardens. He's up there looking out over a sprawling metropolis that he essentially architected himself.
And he speaks the fatal sentence. He says, Is this not Babylon the Great, which I myself have built as a royal residence by the might of my power and for the glory of my majesty?
The pronouns there are doing a lot of heavy lifting. I, my.
It is the anatomy of pride perfectly distilled into one sentence. And notice, the note suggests he's probably not shouting this out to a massive crowd, he's just walking on his roof. This is likely an internal monologue or maybe just a quiet remark to a single attendant.
It's pure self-congratulation.
Exactly.
But I have to play devil's advocate here for a second. Is he technically wrong? He did build it. He was the emperor. He mobilized the workforce. He funded it. Why is stating a historical fact considered insanity?
Because in the worldview of this text, it's a massive factual error. It's a misappropriation of funds, spiritually speaking. The text is arguing that he was the agent of the building, absolutely, but he was not the source of the power.
He's confusing the tool with the builder.
Right. He completely forgot that his ability to build, his very breath, was a delegated gift from something higher.
But wait, Nebuchadnezzar isn't a rookie when it comes to the divine. He's seen Daniel reveal impossible secrets back in chapter 2. He literally saw 3 men survive being thrown into a blazing furnace in chapter 3. He knows there is a God greater than him. How can he be this dense?
That is the scary part. He's not stupid, he's just human. The source material points this out as the terrifying resilience of pride. You can literally see a miracle on Tuesday and be entirely arrogant again by Friday.
We really have a selective memory when it comes to grace, don't we?
We do. Pride overwrites our history. It edits out all the help we received, the mentors we had, the luck we stumbled into, the blessings we frankly didn't earn. It edits all that until the narrative is just, I did this all by myself. It's an incredibly stubborn mechanism in the human brain.
So he's up there, he claims the glory. And the response this time is instantaneous. A voice falls from heaven, and the sentence is executed on the spot.
The voice says, "The kingdom has departed from you."
And immediately we move into the madness. The text describes him being driven away from mankind, eating grass like an ox, his hair growing out like eagle's feathers, his nails like bird claws. It's really graphic.
It is. And clinically speaking, modern scholars often compare this specific description to a condition called boanthropy or lycanthropy. It's a severe delusional state where a person genuinely believes they are an animal.
It's total dehumanization.
It's absolute poetic justice. That's the core literary argument the text is making here. He tried to be a god, right? He tried to elevate himself above humanity.
So the judgment sent him in the exact opposite direction.
Below humanity. He becomes a beast. He wanted to be the highest, so he became the lowest.
So he spends his 7 periods, whether that's 7 literal years or 7 seasons, whatever it is, living out there in the wild.
Yeah.
But then comes the turning point. And I really love the simplicity of the description in the text here. It doesn't describe some long philosophical debate or a gradual realization.
No, it doesn't. It just says, I raised my eyes toward heaven.
That's it. Just a simple look.
But think about the geometry of that moment. For 7 periods, his eyes have been fixed on the dirt, eating grass, looking down. And before that, back on the roof of the palace, his eyes were fixed on himself.
Look at what I built.
So the actual cure for his insanity was just shifting his gaze.
Yes. Inward focus is depicted here as literal madness. Upward focus is depicted as sanity. The very moment he acknowledges a power higher than his own ego, the text says, "My reason returned to me." That is such an interesting definition of sanity. It's not just having a high IQ or being logically sharp. It's being in touch with reality, specifically the reality of your actual position in the hierarchy of the universe.
Right. If you walk around thinking you are the center of the universe, you are, by definition, completely delusional. Recognizing you aren't God is the very first step of cognitive restoration in this story.
Now, the sources do mention a bit of a debate among scholars about this conversion at the end. Nebuchadnezzar comes back. He writes this decree. He praises the Most High. He sounds very religious. But was it actually real?
That is the million-dollar question. Was this a genuine spiritual road to Damascus type of conversion, or was it just a defeated politician finally realizing who the real boss is?
Like, I concede the election, you win.
Exactly, and the text leaves it slightly ambiguous. He certainly uses all the right religious language, he exalts and honors the King of Heaven, but we don't really see a life of humble service after this. He basically disappears from the biblical narrative.
He fades out.
Yeah. The source material suggests we should be pretty cautious about claiming he became a believer in the modern theological sense, but he certainly became a man who deeply understood sovereignty.
And importantly, the stump promise holds true.
It does. His counselors eventually seek him out. He is reestablished on his throne. The root wasn't destroyed. He steps right back into power, but presumably with a drastically different attitude.
So we have a tyrant, a giant tree, a mental breakdown, and a miraculous restoration. It's a great story, but why does this actually matter to the person listening to this deep dive right now?
Yeah.
Because let's face it, you and I and most of our listeners aren't absolute monarchs of the ancient world. We don't have hanging gardens in the backyard.
No, but the Babylon principle applies to absolutely everyone.
How so?
The source notes emphasize that every single one of us builds our own Babylons. For you, it might be your career, it might be the family you raised, it might be your financial portfolio, or your academic reputation, or a business you started.
It's whatever thing we look at and say, is this not the great thing I have built?
Exactly. It's that quiet moment of self-satisfaction where you deliberately erase all the other factors. You forget the mentors, the opportunities you were handed, your health, pure luck, and you just see your own brilliant effort. And this leads to a really crucial insight from the analysis. Success is a test.
Usually we think of failure as the test, right? Can you survive the hard times? Can you get through the recession without quitting?
But success is often the much more dangerous spiritual test. Can you survive getting exactly what you wanted without it completely corrupting your mind? Can you achieve your great Babylon and still remember that you are just a recipient of grace?
It's about fighting that deep sense of entitlement.
It is. And if we go back to that 12-month delay from earlier in the story, that is the part I want you, the listener, to really sit with today.
It's the scary variable in the equation.
It forces you to ask a very uncomfortable question. Am I in the gap right now?
Explain that a bit more.
Well, we established that pride goes before a fall, but the fall was delayed by a full year. So right now, your life might be perfect. You're winning at work, your relationships are good, your bank account is full, you feel on top of the world.
And because of that, you assume that means you're doing everything right. You assume the universe or God completely approves of your attitude and your pride.
But the story suggests that the absence of immediate consequences is not the same thing as approval. You could be harboring that arrogant, I built this pride, totally unaware of the danger, simply because you happen to be in month 6 of a 12-month delay.
That is a genuinely terrifying thought. The roof hasn't caved in yet, so we just naturally assume the foundation is rock solid.
Exactly. So the challenge of this text is to audit yourself before the crash happens. Can you find those subtle indicators of pride, that quiet self-congratulation that's taking root in your heart, and pull them out while you still have your sanity?
Don't wait for the watcher to show up and shout, chop down the tree.
Look at the stump metaphor and realize discipline is real. But so is the incredible opportunity to just look up before it ever gets to that painful point.
That is a deeply sobering thought to end on. We are all walking through our own Babylons every single day. And the question isn't just, what have we built, but who do we genuinely think is keeping it all standing?
And where are our eyes currently looking?
If pride goes before a fall, but the fall is delayed, what subtle indicators of pride might be taking root in your life right now, completely unnoticed, just because the crash hasn't happened yet? Something to definitely mull over this week. That is it for our deep dive into Daniel 4. A pagan king, a dream of a tree, and a masterclass in humility that came the absolute hard way. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we will catch you on the next one.